Well, grace to you and peace from God our Father, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. You know, some years ago there was an article in the News and Observer, which is a newspaper in Raleigh, North Carolina. And it published this big article. And it was about a 20th century piece of research that was done. And the research was on this. Here's the title of the article. How do you measure up as a man? Now, you men, I don't know about you, but just the title makes me squirm a little. How do you measure up as a man? This article, of course, stated that some extensive research had been conducted in the 20th century, and it was about standards for measuring up as a man. And the criteria are really pretty interesting, so I thought I'd kind of write them down here for you as they appeared in the research. There's only 8 of them, and they're pretty simple to understand. Number 1, how to measure up as a man in the 20th century. His ability to make money and conserve money. I don't know about you, but I'm already out on number 1. Number 2, the cost, style, and age of his car. Now this one, of course, is my favorite one, as you can imagine, how much hair he has. Now I have to admit, I'm doing pretty good on the hair side, a little different color, but it's still there. His strength and size. The job he holds and how successful he is at it. The sports he likes. How many clubs he belongs to. And his aggressiveness and reliability. That's the list. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I know I'm in trouble if this is the list. You might even consider these people kind of saintly men, right? These are men of perfection, men who can do no wrong because they've got all the right stuff, don't they? Well, of course, that's all fine and good, but it's a day like today that kind of complicates that line of thinking, because today is All Saints' Day, and you probably don't see a lot of men walking around that fit all 8 of those criteria all that well. Yet, today we're still honoring sainthood, but not as we would define it. Today we're honoring sainthood as Christ defines it. And Christ says that saints are blessed by God, and to be blessed by God is to be made happy by God. Now that definition might make the previous list, those 8 things that I just read, a little difficult to work with, because I suppose a saint needs to be more than just having a good hair, nice car, bulging muscles. So maybe what we should do is try a little different approach. So if a saint is blessed by God and is happy, now maybe we can describe, make up another list describing a saint, one that we're a little more comfortable with, okay? So, what would that last list look like? Well, blessed is the man who makes a fortune. Blessed is the man who earns a 6-figured salary. Happy is the man who has a palace in the city and a nice summer home up in the mountains. Blessed is he who has won the applause of his peers. And for the ladies, sainthood is there as well. So blessed is the woman who's recognized as a darling in her society. Well, now, if you're getting the impression that I'm trying to avoid something, you're right. I am. I am intentionally trying to show how we avoid classifying ourselves as saints in Jesus' terms, assuming that Jesus can't actually mean us. Can't possibly mean us. In fact, we seem to have developed our own definition for sainthood for the living, and then use God's version of sainthood for those who have passed. But that's not how it works. I mean, we all agree that those who have gone before us, they're saints. They're truly blessed by God at the peak of happiness. They're living the promises that they had just lived with all of their lives, but now they're truly living those promises as one of God's chosen ones. They have received the complete inheritance of God's kingdom, and we celebrate this. We'll celebrate this today. It's a celebration. But if a saint is someone blessed by God, then, regardless how we try to avoid this, that brings us into the picture too. You and I. All of us who are still alive. And that means that sainthood is something very different than the two lists that we just read through here a couple minutes ago. In fact, it's a major reversal. To be a saint, to be blessed as a chosen one, is to enjoy the regard and the favor of God. And it's a way of life for us as Christians. So now if you think that we're just too far gone to be called saints, just consider this. You all know that the Apostle Paul is well known for his mission work all over Europe and Asia in establishing new Christian churches. Now you can imagine that came with its challenges, and Paul wrote about a great deal of that. In particular, the Corinthian church was a problem for him. And it didn't matter, though, because he would call all the members of the congregations of all these churches, he would refer to them as saints. And sometimes you know that people would look at him and say, saints? Really, Paul? I mean, the congregation at the Corinthian church, for example, it was absolutely filled with backbiting liars and thieves who had absolutely no consideration for anyone but themselves. Saints? I mean, these are individuals who would hold parties at their private homes and then offer Holy Communion, and communion turned out to be nothing but a special appetizer for the rich and famous because they would be served first. Yet Paul calls them saints. That's because what you choose to do, what you and I choose to do, does not take away from what God intended for us to be. You're God's chosen one, a holy one. And he intended for you to live this life blessed and happy, like a saint. But that seems to be another point of departure for us when we start looking at what God calls a saint and what we call a saint. I mean, God has his ideas of what blessedness and happiness are. And of course, we have our ideas. And you know where our ideas kind of fall. You know, blessed is the one who earns a six-figured salary, right? God's very clear with what it means to be blessed, and it is a complete reversal from what we have learned. God says that if you're poor now, if you're hungry now, if you're weeping now, or being persecuted or laughed at, it's temporary. For the kingdom waits for you, and there is great joy to be found in that promise. And God goes on to say that for those who have filled their stomachs now, or are laughing now, or are being praised, well, your time is coming. Being a saint is to be blessed by God and made truly happy. We were to enjoy the regard and favor of God and receive it as a way of life. That is what God intended for us. But being a saint also means to favor those who are in need. God stands with us during our difficult times, but he also calls us to help others who are in need. I mean, if we are fortunate in our wealth, whatever that wealth might be, and trust me, there are many definitions for wealth. Certainly, if you've ever been to a third world country, you'll come back to your home here with a different definition of wealth. Well, the saintly thing to do is to just bless another with your gift. And there again lies our departure from sainthood. I mean, we don't want to take that kind of responsibility. We just don't. So many people feel that Being a saint means really caring for others in need. I mean, caring to the point of sacrifice. Then we'll just have to leave the saintly thing for those who have gone before us. And that's where we have settled to be comfortable. But we are God's holy ones on this earth. We are the communion of saints that we confess to in our creed. Our Apostles' Creed, we'll do it today. And we are called to take part in the greatest reversal that this world has ever known. Those who have gone before us know that this is the path to happiness, to joy, and to everlasting and glorious peace, because that is what God intended. So at the end of the day, at the end of every day, of all of our days, we really should remember to take this world's definition of sainthood lightly and remember that we are all God's saints. Amen.